Financial Planner. Follow us on YouTube.
The Cabal getting ready for another event? Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the Senate Intel Committee, they came out and they were doing this investigation about, Russian collusion. They were looking into Trump and Clinton. And Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Richard Burr and Vice Chairman Mark Warner told reporters that after conducting more than 100 interviews and reviewing 100,000 pages of documents, it is yet to come to a finding in its probe into whether Russia meddled in the U.S. election. And once again, there is nothing there. They're continually looking. They can't find anything, and there's just nothing there. They said we've interviewed every official of the Obama administration to see what clarity they had on Russian involvement, and more importantly, what they did or did not do and what drove those actions. We have interviewed individuals from around the world. It's safe to say that the inquiry has expanded slightly. Document review generated hundreds of requests on our part for information and identified leads that expanded our initial inquiry. One element of the investigation that has been exhaustively explored is whether President Trump intended to obstruct justice when he fired FBI Director James Comey. The committee has found nothing to support the allegation and is moving on now. So what we're seeing here is that the propaganda, and this is what happens with propaganda. It sounds great when the corporate media is coming out and telling you all these things. And again, propaganda works by repeating it over and over on many different news stations. And this is what they've set up. They set it up where the script is then distributed to all the different news stations, and every station you go to or the radio or whatever you do, you hear the same propaganda message, which convinces you that this must be true. And what has happened here is that propaganda cannot stand on its own, because when you probe propaganda and you look for the truth and you look for evidence and you look for what's really going on, the whole thing falls apart. It's like a house of cards. And this is what we see happening right now. Now, a cybersecurity advisor to Donald Trump, he is pushing to phase out the use of Social Security numbers as an identifier. And I agree with this. I don't think we should be identified by our Social Security numbers. This was not meant to be this way. This was meant to make sure that we had a retirement. This was not the government's money. This was each individual giving their funds into one gigantic fund, which the government was going to hold. They weren't really supposed to touch it. The government wasn't giving you anything from it. It was actually your money that you were putting into this. And we can see that they've expanded this and they use this number to identify us. And right now what we're seeing is the White House Cybersecurity Coordinator, Rob Joyce, said that using a person's Social Security number as an identifier or access control is just a horrific idea. And I do agree with that. I don't think we should be using that as any type of an identifier. Now, we see that the corporate media is out there and they're pushing the idea that Trump and Tillerson, they're arguing with each other. Tillerson is about to leave or quit, and Tillerson is out there saying that he's never considered leaving the post of U.S. Secretary of State. And I think what's happening right now is the corporate media, since they don't have the Russian involvement, the cyber attacks from Russia, they can't figure out what else to do. They're trying to break apart what Trump and Tillerson are doing. Now, a lot of people think that Trump wants to go to war. He's pushing for war. I still do not believe that he is pushing for war. I think Tillerson and Trump, they're playing good cop, bad cop right now, confusing the corporate media and letting everything play out and trying to push peace in all of these regions. Everyone did believe that because he fired missiles into Syria, and again, the base was told ahead of time, the Syrian government was told ahead of time, Russia was told ahead of time, and everyone believed that we were going to have this mass invasion. But the opposite has happened now. Think about it. The U.S., the Cabal, they're scrambling right now. Nothing was done there. It was allowed that Russia and Syria sweep through the country and remove the Islamic State. This was allowed to happen. And we can see there's nothing that the Cabal can do about this right now. And with North Korea, I think the same thing is about to happen, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. Now, Catalonia, it looks like Later today, they're going to make some type of an announcement saying that maybe on Monday they're going to formally announce independence of Catalonia. We'll have to see how that plays out. Most likely they're going to do this because they do have the votes and they're moving towards this agenda. Now, out in North Korea, we see a group of 7 European countries, the Czech Republic, Sweden, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Britain, and Germany. They held at least 2 formal meetings with North Korean officials in North Korea in September. Now, this is coming from the EU. And they felt a little frustrated because the high-level access that they had obtained in North Korea last year had kind of fallen away because of what has been happening with the United States and North Korea. And basically, they're feeling that they didn't make any headway with North Korea because North Korea wants the United States to come into and talk with the European Union. And North Korea right now is seeking direct U.S. talks. Now, of course, we had Tillerson out there saying that there are channels that are being opened up with North Korea, and I think this is the beginning, where North Korea and the United States, because the EU has already been in there. These countries have already been in there trying to negotiate, trying to calm the situation down, and I think what's happening right now is all of this is going to be brought together where they're going to try to work out some type of peace deal where they calm the entire situation down. Now, this doesn't mean the Cabal is going to allow this to happen. They realize that this is what is happening in the background. And I think Trump and Tillerson, Trump is trying to keep the corporate media off guard, saying, no, we're going after Rocket Man, we're going to have war, because this is what the neocons, this is what the Cabal wants. Meanwhile, Tillerson in the background with others, they are negotiating. They're talking everything down right now. And we can see this is what is happening. We see lawmakers right now, they are introducing a new bill. And this is going to be introduced into the House. And what this bill says is that they want to end the direct U.S. military role in the Saudi coalition war in Yemen. And even though the United States is not there actually fighting, but they are refueling planes, they are supplying support, this bill, H-Con Res 81, will provide a major test of congressional will to uphold the War Powers Act of 1973, which reasserted a congressional role in restraining presidential power to enter into wars without its approval in the wake of the Vietnam War debacle. Now, since the Obama administration gave the green light to the Saudi war of destruction in Yemen in March of 2015, it has been widely recognized by both Congress and the news media that the U.S. military personnel have been supplying bombs, planes, refueling, and they've been part of this war. Now, the bill that is introduced calls Congress to direct the president to remove U.S. military personnel from their role in the Saudi air war against the Houthis in Yemen. Now, the question is, when did Congress vote to support the Saudi war in Yemen? They never did. We shouldn't be there at all. We shouldn't be doing anything there. And again, this bill is going to say, listen, we need to end this. And it does need to end. The people should decide who they want the leader to be. But we understand that the Saudis are there. The U.S. is there because Yemen is sitting on a lot of oil. It's across from Djibouti, and it controls that little section between the two countries. And we can see that the United States and Saudi Arabia, they don't want to give up this control. They wanted this control, and they had a puppet government in there, and that puppet government was removed, and this fighting has been going on for a very long time. We'll see what happens to this bill, if it moves forward or not. Russia is out there, and they are accusing the U.S. of supporting the Islamic State. They produced satellite photos. They showed that, yes, the United States does support the Islamic State, and right now, they're just out there point blank saying, yes, we have all the evidence we need. We are showing you the evidence. This is exactly what is happening. They are supporting the paid mercenary, the terrorist groups inside of Syria. And we've known this for a very long time. This is nothing new. We've been reporting on this. We've been following this. We've been showing how the U.S. supports the paid mercenaries, how they created them and brought them into the country. And this is the cabal that was doing this at the time. We also see with the Vegas shooting, it has been confirmed that Stephen Paddock was on some type of powerful psychotropic drug called diazepam in June of this year. And we know what happens with these type of drugs. When you come off of these drugs, you get this reaction where people, hear voices, they become very violent, and records from the Nevada Prescription Monitoring Program obtained Tuesday show that Paddock was prescribed 50 to 10 milligram diazepam tablets by Henderson physician Dr. Stephen Winkler on June 21st. Now, diazepam is a sedative hypnotic drug in the class of drugs which basically trigger aggressive behavior. And we can see that it's showing that he was on this. He was using this. Maybe he was coming off of it at this time. But there were many other cases that where when we look at mass shootings, which we know are a false flag, it seems like they choose these individuals to use, and maybe they wean them off the drug to get this type of reaction, and maybe they kill them ahead of time so they don't know what's going on. But we've seen this with Bradley Stone, a former Marine in suburban Philadelphia, shot and killed his ex-wife Nicole Stone, her mother and her grandmother, and he was being treated for mental health, and basically he was on a huge amount of depressants and antidepressants during that period. Aaron Ray, who was 26, and this individual opened fired with a shotgun at Seattle Pacific University in June of 2014, and the same thing. This individual was on some type of medication. Jose Reyes, the Nevada 7th grader who went on a shooting rampage at his school in October of 2013, he was also taking a prescription antidepressant at the time. Adam Lanza, which we know from the Sandy Hook shooting, a 20-year-old shooter, well, he was also on some type of medication. The Navy Yard shooter Aaron Alexis sprayed bullets at office workers and in a cafeteria on September 16, 2013. This individual was on some type of medication. The Aurora movie theater shooter James Holmes, same thing, on medication. So we should be looking at the medication of the cause of these shootings, and we should not be looking at a gun, which is an inanimate object, because the person has to pick up the gun. The person has to use the gun, just like a person has to use a car or a truck to ram into people. A person has to pick up a knife and do mass stabbings. We need to look at why these individuals are doing what they're doing, what drugs they were on, who put them up to this, and who was controlling the situation. Now, of course, we know that most of this is not going to happen, but this is the beginning and this is the start of trying to figure out what is really going on here. And we can see with this Vegas shooting, there's a lot of questions that are completely unanswered. I mean, one, photos of Stephen Paddock's hotel room have been leaked, and one of those photos appears to show a suicide note. And why hasn't the public been told what is in the note? And of course, I believe this was completely all staged. I believe that he might have been murdered in his room, because if you notice, all these type of mass shootings, the individual is usually killed by the police or kills himself, which is the same pattern that we've been seeing over and over. And we're getting word that, yes, there might have been additional shooters. A taxi driver clearly captured video of an automatic weapon being fired out of a lower level window. Other individuals are saying that there were multiple shooters. We have a police scanner that's saying there were multiple shooters. Again, another unanswered question. Why were law enforcement authorities discussing another suspect on the 4th floor? That's another question. John Rappaport has pointed out it would have been impossible for Stephen Paddock to kill and wound 573 people in less than 5 minutes of shooting with the kinds of weapons that he is alleged to have used. Now, when we look at the weapons and we look at the firearms, coming out of Natural News, Mike Adams, he's saying that the firearms that the media claims that he used, these are not systems that any Joe off the street can just pick up and use to effortlessly mow down 500 people. Running these systems requires extensive training, experience, stamina. It is physically impossible for a guy like Stephen Paddock to operate such a system in the sustained, effective manner that we witnessed. especially when shooting from an elevated position, which throws off all the ranging of the weapons systems. So there's many questions here. Now, why was one woman telling people in the crowd that they were all going to die 45 minutes before the attack happened? Why did law enforcement authorities take 72 minutes to get into the room of Stephen Paddock? Why did Paddock wire $100,000 to the Philippines? Why was Paddock's girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley, in the Philippines? I believe now she's back here in the U.S. Why was Paddock on antidepressants? Why was the Islamic State so eager to take responsibility? Because once again, I think there's different agendas going on here, and they try to push that one, but that didn't work. Apparently, Paddock can earn millions of dollars through real estate deals. If he was so wealthy, why would he all of a sudden snap like that? It makes no sense. Why did he move around so frequently? Was he part of the CIA? Was he a snitch? Was he involved in something? And there are so many more questions than answers right now. And the official story that we're getting, there's a lot of holes in it. They don't make sense. And we've seen false flags before. We've been seeing these type of things before. And a lot of it we can say, yes, this is the same exact pattern that we've seen before. Now the question is, we know the Cabal most likely set up this event. They're pushing gun control, pushing Trump. Are they preparing for another major event? I think they are. I think they're pushed into a corner. They don't have the Russian collusion. They can't figure out what else to do. They're trying to rip Tillerson and Trump apart and, go after each other on the corporate media. We know there's peace talks taking place in North Korea to calm the situation down. The Cabal doesn't want this to happen. The Cabal is losing Syria, which means the globalists, the Cabal, everything that they work for over these many, many years, and it took them a very long time to get to this point, it is all falling apart, which means they're going to become very, very desperate. And I would expect something major to happen coming very soon. And we could see that once they become desperate enough, we will see that event.